Hey everyone, we are going to talk a little bit about what the market looks like because it's the question on everybody's mind. It's the question that I get asked every day, multiple times a day. And I'll put the caveat in here that I can really only speak to the market that I live in and I work in, right? The national news, the news that we get both on the national level, but also from websites like Zillow and Realtor, that's a national or an international spotlight on what the real estate market looks like as a whole. Louisville doesn't trend the way that cities on the coasts like New York and LA trend. And I get most of you probably realize that, in the middle of the country, our highs are not as high and our lows are not as low. And that makes what can appear to be a roller coaster market on the coasts a little bit more like bunny hills. Okay, so that's the caveat that we start with here, is that everything has to be scaled down a lot when we're talking about the middle of the country. So what's going on with the market in Louisville? I work in sort of what we call Kentuckiana, the greater Louisville area. So that is Louisville and its surrounding Kentucky counties and surrounding Indiana counties. Okay, so two states a little bit, but generally the Kentuckiana Louisville metro area. And for the most part, the market looks pretty similar between the Kentucky side and the Indiana side. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to talk about numbers that are Kentucky's numbers, just because adding it all together from multiple different MLS sites is unnecessary. They have very similar data in the Southern Indiana market. So we're going to talk about Kentucky numbers, but how they relate to each other more than anything. The first question everyone wants to know is, of course, about interest rates. Interest rates affect anyone who's obtaining a mortgage on a property, and interest rates have been a roller coaster ride a little bit. Interest rates as of today, March 23rd, when we're making this video, are hovering just over 7. They've been lower in recent weeks. I think the expectation is that they may fall again in the coming weeks. But again, the rises and the falls are rather minuscule. It's this bunny hill action that I'm talking about, where a big rise might be 1/10 of a point and a big fall might be 1/10 of a point. So we're not talking about major fluctuation, but regular fluctuation. A difficult thing to time for sure. Inventory remains a really almost crisis level issue in this part of the country. Inventory today in the Louisville MLS, including everything that's for sale in our MLS, is hovering right at around 1,500 listings. So that is single family homes, condominiums, farms, leases, auction. Everything that is available in the MLS totals about 1,500 available listings. That also includes not just Jefferson County, but like I said, all of the surrounding counties. So some of that extends maybe an hour in every direction around Louisville. So that's not 1,500 3-bed, 2-bath homes in Jefferson County. That's 1,500 listings in the greater area, listings of all kinds. When you limit that to just single family residences, that number actually falls below 1,400 into the high 1,300 number of units. If you take that one step further and just say we want to look at single family residences within Jefferson County, which is where Louisville is located, single family residences in Jefferson County is only 720 listings today. So, about half of the total inventory is single family homes in Louisville proper. And the rest of that other half of the inventory is other types of listings in other places. So how does that number compare to what we have seen in previous time? What's interesting is the number of listings that we have available on the market now is very similar to the number of listings we had available on the market at this time last year. Last year, March dipped a little low, but by April and May, we had about as many listings in the inventory as we have today. So relatively speaking, we're looking at numbers that feel as tight on inventory as they did in 2022. When it comes to the number of homes sold, the number of homes sold right now is currently a little lower than what we saw last year by about 20% or so. But that number is rising. It fell, it looks like, to its lowest point over the winter months, and now is rising in February and March back up to numbers that resemble what we saw in 2022. So while the number of closings was low in the winter, that we're coming out of that now. And when I look back historically, the number of closings is always a little low in the winter as compared to the rest of the year. So that seems to be an indication that it's looking relatively normal compared to what we have seen over the past 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Let's talk about pricing. So pricing, because inventory has been kept down, pricing continues to rise. March of 2023 compared to March of 2022, we're closing homes on average about $5,000 higher priced than we did in March of 2022, which keeps us pretty much on that trend line that we've talked about in other videos of about a 4% increase in home value in Louisville year over year over year. We looked at the data back as far as our MLS system will go, and the trend is just right on the money. There are peaks and valleys that happen every year, not just this year, but every single year. There are little peaks and valleys in home pricing as things close with seasonality and the conditions of the weather and things that play into that. But in general, we're looking at home prices that continue to escalate. And so we consider homes in this part of the country to be an appreciating asset. And so when we're looking at, well, trying to time the market and trying to think, okay, well, when interest rates go down or when this happens, then this. The fact of the matter is we continue to see housing as an appreciating asset in this market. And as long as it's appreciating, the best price is always the price of yesterday. There isn't a time to wait because ultimately the pricing will continue to increase. And I want you to get the very best price that you possibly can. And so while interest rates may fluctuate and they may continue to fluctuate and they're going to be all over the map, there is no wild anticipation expected to occur with interest rates that's going to drastically change what you're paying for homes. What is indicated is that home prices are continuing to rise as inventory remains low. It would take thousands of homes suddenly influencing our market for it to change in any real drastic way, and thousands of homes would be numbers that we haven't seen in years. I mean, we've been hovering in the same sort of market for years now. I talk to folks that say, well, when interest rates go up, that will cause the buyer demand to decrease and then, the inventory will increase. I hear that from time to time, and the interest rates have increased. There are people who are locked into interest rates from a few years ago in the 2s, and then they increase to the 3s, and then the 4s, and the 5s, and the 6s, and the 7s. And the fact of the matter is, they have increased. They've increased dramatically in a short amount of time. And yet the inventory is still low, the buyer demand is still high. Like, what's the magic number? Like, oh, if they were just suddenly to increase to 16% or something, like, we're not seeing this massive increase in interest rates coming that would then slow the buyer pool enough to bring prices down. And that's what would have to happen. We would have to have a sudden change in the market where all the inventory just sits and sits and sits for pricing to come down. And that doesn't seem to be the case. Another point to bring in here is the idea of new construction. So one of the reasons that our inventory remains as tight as it is because new construction was impacted dramatically in the pandemic, right? So new home builds stopped almost completely in the pandemic because everyone went home. When people started to come back to work, we saw the same issues in supply chain, in access to materials, in pricing of materials that was going into new construction that we've seen in everything else. You can't go get your hair cut for the same price that you paid in 2020, and you can't build a home for the same price that you could have built a home in 2020. So things have changed dramatically, but that has slowed the access to inventory that we have in this market because the new home builds paused completely for a while and then started up slowly, and then things were expensive, and so that has not been able to keep up with the demand over the past few years, which is why our inventory remains as short as it does right now. And again, it would take thousands of sudden new home starts to catch us up. So at this point, we're just constantly playing catch up with ourselves. And again, until some very dramatic change happens, this is the market that we expect to continue to be in, because this is the market where it is today. It's simple economics. It is demand that continues to be high, inventory that continues to be not enough to cover the demand, and therefore prices are going to remain high. That's just the matter of fact for the time being. And until something drastic changes, that's what the scene that we're looking at. As far as what you hear on the news, again, we have to apply that to the part of the country that we live in. If you live in New York City, or you live in San Francisco, or you live in Austin, Texas, you may be seeing a very different turn of events. All I can speak to is what we are seeing in this part of the country, and this continues to play into how our market looks here. Several sites, Realtor.com and Zillow, have all named Louisville in particular for 2023 as one of the largest growing pricing markets. That meaning our pricing is going to escalate in Louisville more than other cities because of the way that our market looks here. I think Realtor.com said that we were going to be the third most increasing price market in 2023 in the country. And again, it's because we didn't see the massive escalation in prices that they saw in Austin and San Francisco. And so ours was a little bit more reserved here, which leaves that we're not wildly overpriced now. We're just where we need to be to continue to move up in pricing. This is fantastic news if you own a home, or if you have purchased a home in the last few years. Your home is just steadily increasing in value year over year over year. It's a great place to buy and invest in real estate because we are just a little bit more chill, a little more relaxed when it comes to, the wildness of the market. Instead of a massive decrease in home values like you might see in another city, maybe ours just only go up 2% that year. But again, by and large, we are seeing only increases in home value in this part of the country. That's all for Lindsay's soapbox of the day. Thank you for being the choir that I can preach to. But for more content like this, of course, please like and subscribe to our channel at the Symphony Group.